test. And then she said, well, I'd rather tell you when I see you. And I instantly knew. And I said, was it the HIV test? And she said, yes. I ended up quitting the job I loved, sold the house that I loved, that I was redoing, to move back here to Texas in my own way as a way to die. Hey, advocates, it's your girl, Yaya Dawn. This is the A Podcast. And on this week's episode, we are talking about blooming where you're planted. And I have today with me an amazing woman. I mean, when I tell you she is all about Black women and HIV, the policy behind this epidemic. When I tell she has her own organization, she is the incomparable, the amazing, the outstanding, the outspoken, the wonderful Miss Venita Ray. Hey, girl, hey.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Welcome. So normally, Venita, when we start an episode, me and my co-host, Noonday and JR Knight, we usually started with a song. While we can't play the song, but we usually have a song that's befitting of the episode. And when I realized that this was about blooming where you're planted, the song that immediately came to my mind was New Birth's Wildflower.
Wow. That was a song I loved as a kid or as a teenager, and it's kind of told my story too. Growing up.
Exactly.
I think that's important. When you first said y'all like a song, my first song came to Me Against the World by Tupac.
Oh, okay. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
I'm old school. I promise you I am.
Hey.
So listen, we're on the heels of Women's History Month, but we're still talking about things that affect us as women living with HIV, Black women living with HIV, and all that entails, right? So when I think about the things that I've gone through, right, blooming where I'm planted. First, I was planted in dirt. And so my dad told me, we were having a conversation one day, and I said, you know what? Sometimes I say I wouldn't change anything about what I've been through because it made me who I am. Okay. But I said, seriously, I really would. There are some things that I would probably change. And he said, it's the nutrients that are found in the dirt that make you who you are. Those nutrients are what causes us to blossom and to bloom. And I thought about that, and I was like, yeah, okay, I like that, Daddy. I like that. But as it relates to us and our healthcare, right? The soil, the dirt, the nutrients that are found in our healthcare, or the lack of nutrients. Because you know probably better than me all of the struggles, the barriers that prevent us as Black women from receiving quality health care, right?
Definitely do.
Okay.
I definitely do. And when you talked about the wildflower, and I so relate to that, I also think of Black women, and it's my last tat I have to get, and it's of a lotus, because lotuses, just like dandelions, the term, they break through out of the mud, the swamp, and still bloom beautifully. And that really speaks to me about Black women and what we must demand. So sometimes we don't get to pick the dirt. Sometimes we have to wait on the nutrients, right? But the reality is we're going to grow through some stuff that other people may not be growing through. And Black women have to kind of navigate for ourselves, for others, to get the care we need, or first to not even have to be diagnosed with this illness.
You said a mouthful then.
Yeah.
You definitely said a mouthful then. So, I remember a training that I did when I first came to AP. my director wanted me to get some policy education. And so that policy education came through PWN, and you were the trainer.
Really?
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't know.
Yes, ma'am. That was back in 20, the beginning of 22.
Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So I mentioned that because I think about you and your advocacy work. And I just think that I think that the education, I think that when you're on any platform, and I've heard you on several different platforms, right? And the strength that I hear when you speak, the determination, the commitment, like you are unapologetically who you are, and they're no holds barred. And so take me back to how you got to this point. How you reached that point?
I sure didn't get that way overnight. And for me, April 2nd, 2003 was the day that the world changed.
Okay.
It went dark first, and it stayed dark for 4 years. At the time of my diagnosis, I lived in DC, had just overcome a lot of things to get there, and finally was practicing law and doing the things I love to do. And I thought, my God, I have arrived. I've overcome drug addiction, being a teenage mom, going through all the things that people go through growing up poor or growing up broke, or, you know, having to learn that broke is a condition of the pocket and not the mind.
Right.
But, you know, I was growing up, it's a condition of the mind too, but having to go through all that, and I felt like I had finally arrived, and I went and got a physical in DC, living there. And when that doctor called me and said, hey, you need to come back in to talk about one of your tests. And I was like, what test? And then she said, well, I'd rather tell you when I see you. And I instantly knew. And I said, was it the HIV test? And she said, yes. And I don't remember much after that, but it was a long road. I ended up quitting the job I loved, sold the house that I loved, that I was redoing, to move back here to Texas in my own way, as a way to die. I found that the darkness, which I can call depression now, I couldn't at the time. I was suicidal every day. It was really rough. So I gave it all up, moved to Houston, where my daughter was and my sister was, because those are the people most close to me. And I proceeded to try to exist. You know, and it's hard to exist because you can't plan for tomorrow when you don't believe in one. Right. So I did it for 4 years till I finally got this voice that said, either kill yourself or find a way to move on. And prior to my diagnosis, I've been doing advocacy for years. I became an attorney to be able to work in communities. Ward 8 was my neighborhood in DC. I mean, I loved working in community. But after my diagnosis, I felt like such a lie. I had worked in HIV in 90 and 91, watched people die. And something about it I just felt like I said I love me, but I beat myself up for not acting in the ways that I love me, I thought at the time. But after moving to Houston and being around my family, that 4-year kind of darkness, I finally met some people, and they were like, oh, we have a support group. Well, I wasn't sure I wanted to go to no support group, but I finally went. And little by little, I began to want to show up. And I think the first thing that attracted me was finding an advocacy lane in this work, because I didn't know what I would do. You know, was I going to practice law, whatever, but finding a lane in this work that allowed me to bring those skills. And now, like I used to tell people, I had a story before I got here. I did not need HIV to be added to my story, because to me, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. But when I found that lane eventually, and began to go around to Ryan White and listen. I'm a researcher and a person who liked to know. And first when I did it, I took on the language they were saying. I said, what do I call myself? They said a consumer. Nobody asked me whether I got Ryan White or not. Right. Because I had a job. I didn't get Ryan White, but I did what they did. And it took me a few years to realize and find my own voice in this movement. But when I did, it was the greatest joy that I could combine what I thought was over, that work I'd started doing, and then I could take it and combine it here. And now there was a personal perspective to it, because in my work in community before, I was never the story.
Right.
Now this work began the story. And over time, I've developed my own way of thinking about myself. I didn't understand and refused to accept that one day I was this, and the next day serial status changed and the world looked at me differently.
Mm-hmm.
And so it began to bother me that Black women were looked this way and in the way that we were talked about. And I've always been a little bit of a revolutionary, so that wasn't hard. But when I began to really instead of just listening and repeating what people were saying, because I needed to learn the language and finding my own language, that's when I became adamant about the things that I thought they were present in this movement around the role of Blacks, the racism that limits our access, all of those things that I've been talking for years. This lane gave me a way to put it. And after a few years of listening and questioning, I began to develop my own voice. And I thought, if I'm gonna stay in this work, I gotta say it like I think it. And then I got to be around other people who believe that way. And that's how I got very strong in my position. And you're right, unapologetic in it. But because I didn't understand this. Wait a minute, they ain't talking about race up in here? I just didn't understand, how are we having these conversations and never talking about the obvious?
Right.
And then so I just had to make a lane for it.
And I am so grateful that you did. Like, you have made a pathway for women like me to be able to follow and to be unapologetic and to be able to use my voice to uplift others,
That's right.
to educate them. I believe in teaching Black women how to fish.
I agree.
Right? A lot of times when I meet women, they have they don't know what the right questions to ask when they go to their doctor, or they'll just, whatever the doctor tells them, they're going to go for it. You say, stand on my legs, stand on one foot and bark like a dog. Well, that's what they're going to do. Right?
But in the beginning, though, for me, even though I was an attorney and did all this, HIV just shut me down, lost my voice and everything. And so I did not, the lane I created for myself in advocacy and policy was different than the lane for treatment. It took me all those years. I went in very passive because I didn't want this. And I kept waiting for the call that was going to say, we made a mistake, Ms. Ray. And when I would go to the doctor, he would try to suggest these things. And finally he said, how about this? We're just going to focus on you taking your medicine, because I wasn't a happy girl. And people think that because they tell you it's not a death,
sentence.
Yeah. That's supposed to make a difference. Like, you come live with this shit then. And I know in their head, they're just thinking, I'm glad it ain't me. But that is crap. You got to live with this, And God, I forgot my train of thought. What was I saying?
You were talking about.
So sitting with my doctor for the longest, all I did, every visit, I would cry. Every time we had to take blood, I would cry. We ain't talking. You just do what you got to do, because it wasn't a fun thing. And it took some years before I felt my power again, and that HIV didn't feel bigger than me. Because when that doctor told me he couldn't guarantee I wasn't going to die, even if I took my medicine, totally messed me up. And so it took a while. And probably in 2007, I began to get my voice back. In 2011, I went public with my status. And my daughter, because when we go public, our family go public too. So I had to get her permission, but they had been there with me through every step. But one of the biggest things when I went public, I went to Africa and climbed Mount Kilimanjaro as a testament that I had a slogan: when I climb, we all climb. And that I went to Africa as an openly positive woman and came back, and I knew I was never going to be ashamed again, because secrecy out of shame is different from secrecy out of need to know.
Yes.
And I had been living with that secrecy of shame for all those years, and I made a decision not to. But what else helped me, I decided to go to yoga. It was in my mind. I'd always been physically active, and when you're suicidal, you don't need to exercise if you're going to die, right? Well, I started back exercising before I realized that I was over that. And yoga was calling me, and on that yoga mat is where I really found my power. And what it taught me was I reclaimed my power through health, through fitness, through eating, because I thought I can't cure me, but I can control how much I pray, meditate, how active I am, what I eat. I mean, I juiced every day. I did meal prep. And those are the ways I began to reclaim my power. I decided on a T-cell count that I was going to get, and I did it. So I was taking the same medicine, but at that point, I began to tell them, no, ain't taking that one no more, ain't taking this one. When I took charge of my health care, it was complete. When I told doctors, we are not partners. I'm the CEO and this is a board. You all get to give your opinion and then I make the decision. This idea of partnership it connotes equal gain and equal loss. There ain't no equal gain and equal loss. My pharmacy is not my partner.
Right.
He's on the board. My doctor is not my partner. He is on my board. And because he don't get to go home with this, so it's easy for what they say. So once I did that, there was no turning back.
Wow. So I heard what you said, taking back our power.
Mm-hmm.
That is strong. And I truly believe that once we figure out how to do that, if it's yoga, if it's meditation, if it's shopping,
girl, I'm a shopper. Or whatever. And for some, it's introducing them to their power.
Right.
Because they never found it before. Mm-hmm. So introducing them to their power. And for me, it's that collective power. Because in 2014, I started doing leadership work in HIV, and I developed a program to train people living with HIV to be leaders. Mm-hmm. And I went to AIDS Watch. And Wahida El Shabazz pulled me in a room with PWN, and them women was roaring in there. The whole restaurant was drowned out by them. And I said to myself, oh yeah, we doing this. And I came back here and started another chapter, but I had to find my advocates first. So I brought them into my training program, never told nobody, and then tried to see which ones I could get to go further. Right. So people sometimes, and they weren't ready when I brought them into it. So I trained them and then got 5 women, and we was off and running in 2016. So it took me 2 years.
And look, 10 years later, I am the co-chair. I am one of the co-chairs for our local PWN DFW chapter. And just wanting to grab some sisters, teach them how to be advocates, teach them about self-love for those of us, or for those who have forgotten that not only are we worthy of love, we deserve it, and we deserve it from ourselves. Once we begin to love ourselves.
But you got to model that for some folks. Let's just be real. It's practice. It's a process. It's not an event. People just don't, because we have this thing to say, oh, we must love ourselves. Well, shit, I demonstrated in different things I do, but I had to learn to do that. Right. It wasn't just, they'll say, oh, you're just going to love it. No, I wasn't happy being positive. And I want folks to be honest about where they are. When I finally got willing to go to that support group, everybody wanted to focus on me because I told them I ain't happy. I don't like this shit. Y'all, I finally said, stop talking about me and talk about yourselves. But being honest allowed me to come out. When I came out in 2011, some of them folks are still in that circle because the world wants us to just say it's not a death sentence, so I'm happy. Nah. And that is not the truth. So they never got honest. And I think so helping them, and I think modeling what it means to have power, modeling what it means to love yourself, because it's an easy thing to say and it's more difficult to practice. So how we practice that, how it shows up. And then you can love a church and go there, but you can't be yourself, because can't nobody know. I don't necessarily remember secrecy out of shame or secrecy out of need to know. The women I've talked to, it's been shame.
And I think that I've had a lot of experience with that as well. And you're right. So where I am today, there are more days that I love myself than there are. But I still have those days when I just...
You got to practice it.
Ooh.
But you know what? All humans have those days. So, but the thing I want folks to know is collective power. When we support each other, and women are relational, so when we support each other, we give other people that power. And I look at the chapters, I look at y'all. Y'all are doing the same thing. So for me, it's I believe in building collective power. I've always been about that. So I do know. Once we get together, there's no stopping
us. I am with you there.
So I still say we might have, started out in the dirt and sometimes the swamp, sometimes wherever, but we still have the ability to, I used to say lemonades out of lemon, but the ability to still grow and still be. And so for me, my nieces, my grandsons, everybody get to know that this is possible.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, we have here at AP talking about self-advocacy. We have a program called I Am Thee. And it's all about self-advocacy, and it's the idea of taking complete ownership of your narrative. So, like, how do we take that first step to become the driver of our own vehicles?
I surely going to care is one thing, but I still believe it's getting around other people living with HIV, other women. I mean, getting over the shame of whatever it may feel like.
Right.
I think it takes when we can finally get with our own peers. I felt like now my family or finding your own network. If you can get that amongst your family, that's fine. But typically it happens among us because a lot of women haven't told family members and no one else can understand navigating, dating, living with HIV. So I think the way that it happens is when we get together collectively and share. I mean, I'm one of those people that shut down. I don't want to get together with nobody when I'm in pain. But once I got willing to do that, the world changed. It just changed at my pace.
Right. So I have this in the LGBTQ plus community. They have what's known as chosen families, right? And so I say I have a family by love and I have a family by blood. So my family by love is that chosen family, that family that you're speaking of, that network of support. That holding me up when I'm feeling down, and vice versa. I get to do the same thing for them. So, okay, let's talk about being in a doctor's office and what does self-advocacy sound like or look like when you're in that doctor's office?
Well, I'll tell you, when I first began to, reclaim my power, you'd be in the doctor's office and all of a sudden an intern or some researcher comes in to ask you a question. Now, at first I just cried, but to say, did I give you permission to come in here? Or make an appointment with a doctor the first time when I moved to Houston, and then I'm not comfortable anyway. And then the second time, the PA comes in. I was like, I did not approve this. So being in the doctor's office is where once I knew that I could say and demand what I needed to feel comfortable, because I wasn't comfortable. So you changing up people on me without my permission, and I think that's one of the biggest things in HIV. You don't get to see, you don't know who sees your information. A case manager comes up to you that you didn't tell to come up to you. A pharmacist calls you and say, "What are you doing?" And want to know how you're doing. I thought, well, I'm doing fine. They said, are you taking your meds? And I said, did I ask you to call me? I'm a grown-ass woman. Or are you in there with a physician? And they said, well, how's your sex life? How many sexual partners? And I told the lady, you can't ask me that. Because living with HIV, I feel like there seems to be in this arena some permission to treat us as children instead of as grown-ass women. And so from a case manager that may do it, which I saw it and had to say, hold up, that's not how you talk to me. You have to do that a lot. In doctor's offices, you have to be mindful. When they told me to come back for my first visit from that doctor that discovered I was positive, I said yes, but of course I didn't. And she kept calling. I'll give her this, a Black doctor woman in DC. Finally, when she got me, I said, I don't want to come in there because I know everybody knows.
Right.
I'll never forget telling her that. She said, Venita, I am the only one who saw the results. She said, when you come in, I'll have them immediately take you in a room by yourself. I mean, she did everything she could to get me back in there because of those concerns. And I did go back. But it took a while, like I said, and that doctor's office to go in there and really feel like you have the power to protect privacy and that you have the power to say what it is you want and don't want in the doctors, and then make them all respect it, because I feel like sometimes we're treated as children. And I've changed my own medicine a time or two. I'm not saying for others to do that, but I know how my body feels. And when I tell somebody and they say, well, keep trying for a couple more months, I was done. Or I went into a nurse practitioner and I said, do you share with people the science behind you? It was you. And she stuttered and said, well, I've never seen her again, because I don't want to perpetuate with a provider who picks and chooses who should be educated.
Right.
So again, in the beginning, it wasn't like that. Now there are things that I will say, and we have the right to grieve. And there's another aspect to that. When you're getting Ryan White care, some people don't always feel like they can speak back because they think they're going to be punished for, you know, complaining or posting a complaint. Once I got my power back, I don't feel that. I think I'm a customer and you should serve me no matter what.
No, I like what you said when you said, I'm the CEO, you all are the board. And that's my biggest takeaway from having a visit in a doctor's office. Listen, you're just on the board. I'm the CEO.
I have a doctor, he still won't say, what do you think? Or one time being in the straps. I've only got Ryan White a couple times, but getting ready to get a pap smear, butt naked in the straps. And they come and tell me, oh, I'm sorry, Miss Ray, you've got to get dressed. You can't see them under the Ryan White. You have to see someone else. And luckily, I know enough about the system that wouldn't have run me off, but that was so degrading.
Yes.
Or to have a doctor examine me and ask me in the middle of the examination, how did I get it? We're not talking about it. And when I don't answer fast enough, he says, oh, you probably don't remember. So, sometimes access in healthcare can be a challenge, but if you really got to speak up and you really got to stand up.
It's a shame that we suffer stigma in the healthcare industry with our medical professionals, with our doctors, our nurses, even sometimes with our case managers.
Absolutely.
We still have to deal with stigma. And a lot of times it's ignorance as well. When you made the comment about the doctor, I've found that sometimes doctors, they still need education.
Or we need a new doctor. Okay, because let's be real. Even when all this time, I'm paying him for this time, I don't want to do all the educating. I mean, I want a new doctor, okay? Or if I choose that. So it's not my job to educate the doctor. Now, I can educate them about the care that they're going to give to me.
Right.
But it's not my job to educate the doctor. I think, and I've done enough trainings with providers too, where I have said this very thing. And they, do better. Do better.
At the end of the day.
Or use language like infected and shit.
So one of my last questions, because we definitely want to leave. We want to end on a high note, talking about some growth, encouragement, empowerment. So I'm going to ask you this question, but I want to answer it. I want to answer it first, and then I'm going to want your answer. Okay. So how does one person stepping into their power and advocating for their own health positively impact the broader community, right? And so for me, when I began to, when I learned that I was the CEO, right? I was able to then not only speak up for myself, but when others hear me speak, or when they see, when they watch my footsteps, it encourages them and it empowers them. You know, it's funny. Like, we were just at AIDS Watch, and so we had to go into some different sessions and speak to some legislative aides and things like that. And for our group, no one wanted to head the conversation. And so I took on that responsibility, and I started talking with the staffer and just giving some information. And when there was a lull, or when there was a gap in the conversation, I would jump in. And so afterwards, I received, a young lady told me, she thanked me. Mm-hmm. She said, Yolanda, we need more voices like you. And so I said, well, today is your first step in becoming one of those voices. Mm-hmm. And then she reiterated it. She sent me a text message saying the same thing. Nice. And I'm like, okay, it felt good to be able to have that impact on somebody else. Not so much of what I said, but the fact that I was able to empower and encourage someone else to be able to do the same thing. Yeah. That's what it's about for me.
For me, way before HIV, I've always known that my expression of love is service. Mm-hmm. So I was clear about that before I got here, that service is love in action to me. So I was serving before I was diagnosed with HIV. Mm-hmm. And so finally finding my power again and things. And then one of the first roles that I got was developing a leadership program for women, for people living with HIV. They wanted to pay me $20,000 a year for that 1 year. And, how am I going to live?
Right.
I got a law degree. I got student loans. Well, I decided to do it. And that was 2014. And I knew that I had the power to change people. I believe I have a gift of being able to inspire, being able to motivate, being able to, I look for the light in people's eyes about what inspires them or move them. Some of the things, so acceptance of my diagnosis has allowed me to live out loud, and other women can then gather something on the story. No matter where I go, and my daughter hates this, I'm always going to share a little bit of a story, what it was like for me and what happened and what it'd be like for you. I believe in that versus preaching to somebody, you should do this. This is what I did. And so when I took that power, other people began to watch it. And first you got to get it personally, because I knew I could not share my diagnosis with anybody where their reaction was going to change how I felt about myself.
Right.
So I had to get ready. So there's all these ideas of trying to make women disclose before they're ready. We need to stop that shit. They can advocate even if they're not open, just like our allies do. So showing them the different lanes. So I'm always, when I'm in spaces, and this was before HIV and now, and I've realized my original kind of intuitiveness around community work is first educating them, helping them believe it's done. They can do it. Building community, right? Acknowledging the shortcomings, telling the truth, recognizing that this work has many lanes, and breaking it down for people, because it may not be your lane that they get empowered. They might sit over there and think they can't do because they can't do what you do.
Right.
But every lane is equal. And I just teach that. So for me, it has been a ripple effect. Because I got into this, and the leaders, now some of those leaders are still leading PWN. I have this belief. One journalist wrote this article about me one time. She said, Donald Trump is building a wall, Venita's building an army. And I believe in that, because I believe in creating the pipeline of leaders. I believe in leading folks. I believe in teaching folks and turn them loose. And so how we can inspire, educate, motivate, and show them that they can. And because of that, I've gotten roles to do that in, whether it was at Legacy Community Health at first. And then it became, and I'm a little angry too, because I hate injustice. And so I'm going to inspire you by my passion. Passion will take you sometimes where knowledge won't. And if you can combine knowledge and passion, you can do something. But the lanes may be different. It could be the church. It could be over here in immigration stuff. It doesn't have to look the same. And working with PWN, I believe in leadership development. So I have gotten some awesome positions of where that ripple effect became. I mean, I look at Michael, Elizabeth, these are male and female, positive and negative, that I've had the chance to work with. I work with a lot of leaders now because I believe that we have to touch folks and inspire them by seeing what the spark is in their eyes. And I believe in the ripple effect, because I can see where people I've worked with, where they're at now. And it ain't about me. They had the gift when I met them. They just didn't know.
Right.
One guy, when he wrote an application to my program in 2014, I'll never forget it, because I said, what are you most afraid of? And his answer was that I'm more powerful than I know. And it blows me away. So I get so much back from that, seeing folks just do leaps and bounds. And so, and I know I can go to the next one now, because so it is my calling. It is my mission. I don't say that too often, but I believe in the ripple effect. Each one teach one. People support what they help create. Stop creating shit without people if you want them to own it. I don't invite you to the meeting once I develop the agenda. If I did, it's only the first time. The second time, we're co-creating. So you got to share power, and then you can show people the power that they have. And in some of my programs, we watch every HIV history movie that there was ever made. We did it over a 3-year period because I wanted them to know where most of this came from. And when they see that every advancement in HIV happened because we were at the table. I tell people I stand on the shoulders of gay men, as well as my Black ancestors who made a space for this. But now we have to do more than just create spaces, because you know, the space was looking very the same, and we need spaces that look like us and do like us. And I think that's a way to inspire more. In 2016, we started talking about we Black and living with HIV. That's a little different nuance that we needed to start addressing. And once we did, folks were saying, we can say we Black around here.
Yeah.
You know? And let me say this, in teaching people HIV is a racial justice issue, how do we look at this disease and see we always say this is we're disproportionately impacted, but yet we don't call out, well, this must be a race issue. I mean, HIV don't know I'm Black, you know, so we got to get away from these old ideas of why we're here and start really empowering people by acknowledging the things that are beyond our power. Oh, you just didn't behave right. So that will demean and devalue you versus everybody's having sex. There's some issues out there you didn't create.
Wait a minute now, Nita. Hold on.
Yeah.
This sounds like we're going to have you back. You've got to come back. You've got to come back.
Sex is the transmission route. It is not what makes us vulnerable to HIV.
Right.
Those barriers, Black women, we live at the intersection of race and gender. So all the racism, racial injustice, all the gender inequity, and never mind the historical thing that people still, welfare was good for white widows, but when Black women got on it, we were lazy. So, I mean, we have a president who calls Black women dogs. So, I mean, we live at that intersection, and that's the reason. It is not your fault. Those things were not created by us. But because of those things, we are now most vulnerable to HIV, mass incarceration and all of that. So once you give people that kind of power or acknowledgement and know that every skill they have is valued and there's a place for it, folks change. I change. So for anyone who identifies as female or male, and you are ready to bloom where you're planted, I would first say it is not your fault. I know this whole movement talks about behavioral interventions and if you just put on a condom, but what I'm telling you, your vulnerability and later the acquisition of HIV is not your fault. The reason why you are vulnerable and not at risk, I'm not going to say that because that implies you did something wrong. It is because of structural and systemic issues that created the environment in which we were born in. We didn't do this to ourselves, folks. So I need you to know it is not your fault. And you too can rise again and find your place, however and wherever you choose it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming, Nita. Thank you. Listen, there will be a part 2.
Oh, yeah, I was just getting into my whole racial shit. I mean, they know I don't play. HIV is a racial justice issue. We look at Black and brown people and we never say that. Why? We assume we just magically appeared here?
And on that
it's our behavior.
And on that note, y'all, thank you for
don't get me started,
watching the A. Hit that like, subscribe. If you have a comment, go ahead, give us a comment. We're waiting to hear from you.